All right, welcome back to episode 10 of my Age of Wonders 3 single stack challenge. I have several turns ago, about 5 or so, I killed the leader, and then I was able to go underground, find their capital here. So I entered here, took this out, peeked on this, came up here, took this out, and then took this out. So it wasn't too bad. So let's look at this. Yeah, and so he had respawned here after taking him out. So he respawned at the capital, but he was stuck with the crap army, so it was super easy to take him out. This isn't terribly interesting, but I'll show it anyways. Regrowth and the high health I enjoyed. Ranged unit. And just being able to be pretty reckless with them. No damage to him because he's got fire spirit and shock protection. So it's really nothing at all. So, yeah. Wasn't very interesting. But easy enough. So what do we need to talk about now that the game is complete? What should we recap? Let's start with our items and stuff. So here's how we ended. This is my leader. 75, 15, 12, 110 casting points. There's the list of spells. Most of that has remained pretty consistent the last 30 or so turns. Pretty decent range damage. I think all the buffs have been the same forever. Let's look at the items. So you know about the inflict weakening with every attack. You've known about that. Additional debuffs on attacks with that. So he's doing a lot of debuffs. Fire boots, seeker helm, fire protection, unholy champion. This never needed to use, but could be useful sometimes. That I never really used because the shock weakness I wasn't a big fan of. This is mostly the same. I talked about that. The shock protection, these boots were useful against that divine vengeance. I switched this weapon, the +4 melee strength, because we were dealing with machines towards the end. Helped with the spear protection, fire protection. Never had a chance to use that helm, which I got late in the game. But as you can see, the resistances are pretty excellent. This is perfect versus shrines, so he was a main person. With her 123.12, oh, for him 85.20.12. So she was pretty beefy too. She had kept the life drain for fleshy, the 100% spirit, the 10. Really excellent shields with the defender plus all that bonus stuff, which I talked about. This, the flame res, this mount I got late, nice for the first strike and inflict crippling wounds. Yeah. And then with her, we've known about these the inflict weakening debuff, the extra range damage, some blight protection. All my folks were really happy, so I was getting a lot of good procs. You know about that and this and that, and the seeker helm. That I was really excited to use. Got it very late in the game off of the dead hero. The fire breath that would proc the stunning touch would be cool. Thunderstorm, all the levels of sorcery so that I could do the Chaos Rift we talked about. And over here, +2, the Inflict Weakened, some resistance, some spirit protection, some fire. Hadn't yet had a good chest piece. Seeker heals. Every person had heal one way or another. I think I probably was going to pop that onto in there. Every person had a way to fly or float to keep the stack really mobile. Lots of different ranged options by the end of the game. Called Lightning. Tried to keep the hit points high so that the regrowth could do good stuff. Yeah. Okay. Resistance is there. Pretty decent resistance is there, especially this triumvirate for dealing with the shrines. It's okay. Oh, just okay there. And the 2 dreadnoughts had the summon siege engine, so we could get additional units on the battlefield. So that's it. I was working on Wrath of God. I never had, this is the stuff that I had yet to research. Stuff that I had under my belt. We knew about all of this. We knew about all of that for a while. Picked that up late. It would have been potentially interesting to use. And here I went to Advanced Logistics halfway through the campaign once I got the absolute core stuff. Hasty Plunder was essential. Order of Healing was really helpful on the priests very early. Advanced Logistics was essential, all the levels of Divine Channeling. So it was pretty simple. This I happened to get because I had upgraded cavalry into knights through research early, and so that helped a little bit. But yeah, not much in terms of Empire upgrades, because for the purposes of this sort of challenge, that wasn't really essential to have a lot of it. I plundered 19 cities, scorched earth a bunch of times, which is especially useful if you take over a city and you want to move away rather than sitting the 2 turns for to successfully plunder. Then you can do a scorched earth, which I can't because I have no casting points at the end of the game, but you could apply scorched earth and run, and so if someone happens to take it over, it'll raise to the ground. You won't get the resources from the plunder, but it will successfully raise, which is nice. So let's see, I think we can exit and we'll give overview stats. Yeah, okay, so I'm red. You can see score, like with the Heroes Only challenge, remains low throughout because I don't have much of an empire, and I'm very limited in terms of troops. But you can see Merlin, you can see where people fell at what points. Knowledge score, slowly rose, and then at this point, most of my cities in the upper left were taken over by independents or the enemy, so it was a real slow climb. And these little bits is when I cleared sites that gave me a knowledge boost. And so Namlik was the one who got the farthest in terms of knowledge. But this map, I never encountered global, I was never running into global enemy AI spells, like the Theocrat, weakness to spirit, the happiness debuff from a rogue, that sort of stuff. Nobody ever had those god tier ultimate spells up, which is useful. I was kind of surprised. Happiness, fluctuation, and then my domain score remained low because I was just constantly raising cities. So this was like climbing up, but then my city started to get taken over. Yeah, and now I'm definitely had the biggest market share in terms of domain stuff. So that is where we're at with that. So thank you for watching the single stack challenge. There's a Steam guide that I will link to in the description below that offers advice on tackling the sort of single stack challenge. as well as some other challenges that don't involve the use of Necromancer, because my other Steam guide on how to use Draconian Necromancer to consistently beat large teams of enemy AI and some challenge versions of that. That was the first guide that I built specific to using Draconian Necromancer really well. But since then, my last few challenges are starting to use stuff other than that race class combination. So, for example, this with a single stack, I found that the Human Theocrat was a really good fit, especially the Theocrat class with the Divine Justicars was really essential, I think, for making this strategy simple. And it gave you a lot of flexibility in terms of being able to lose a given hero or secondary unit, and it would just come back from the resurgence. So that made it very palatable for a challenge. The tough part was getting up the leader Theocrat to level 11 so that Divine Justicars could be upgraded to, and from then on it felt a lot less strenuous because I wasn't worried about losing a unit or two after that, because they would just resurge. I'm trying to think what else. And so other commentary and reflections on what made this, I'll cover in the guide in the requisite place. But the other thing I'll note is that item forging continued to be essential. Being able to get that tireless life drain mechanic going was really important. Getting the heal items was really useful on all the heroes. The Seeker helmets are essential. So those are some of the item forge things that just really helped make the strategy work a lot better. Really, this was the first challenge where I used the Inflict Weakening melee weapon for the ranged heroes that would give them that Inflict Weakened chance to proc on all ranged attacks, and I really liked that. I think that worked pretty well, reducing the resistance and whatnot. So yeah, I think those are my comments. Again, thank you for watching. If you haven't seen my other challenge series, please do check them out. I did a heroes only challenge series prior to this with Necromancer, where I ended with something like 21 heroes by the end of it. It was especially challenging earlier on when I was starting with only 2 heroes. That was kind of fun. And then before that was the most grueling challenge I had ever done, which was giving my 5 enemy AI opponents a 40 turn head start. That really sucked and took forever. It's like 120 turns or something like that. I had to be super perfectionist about my movement, my battle strategy, and it was really intense. And there's been some other stuff, but that was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, is giving my enemy opponents 40 turns to build up before I moved out of my capital and started doing stuff for the first time. So that's also something worth checking out. And for that, I recorded every moment to moment, whereas with these last 2 challenges, they've been recap videos every so often, which is a little easier to watch. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already, and look forward to bringing you more Age of Wonders 3 challenges in the future. Thanks.